Welcome back to the United Pubcast, the podcast of the official Man United Supporters Club here in Sydney for your match preview. The mighty Manchester United travelling for the first time ever away to Moldova to play Sheriff FC. So an historic podcast. Never thought we'd be in that position where we're previewing Thursday night football away in Moldova, but here we are. These are the facts that we do have in front of us. And it's an interesting one. We might as well sort of take it for what it is and enjoy it, because we've spoken so much over recent seasons about different types of fans and the sort of the different demographics within the fan base. And for so many of these travelling fans, which is a huge part of Manchester United, the away fans is such a sort of iconic part of the club. They love this. They love going away to Moldova. Yes, we would like trips to the San Siro or Bayern Munich and clubs like that in regards to the competition, but in regards to sort of the culture of a fan and the experiences of fans, going away to Moldova for the first time is a huge occasion for them. So hopefully all the travelling fans do enjoy it. It is, I think, George, it is a 2:45 a.m. kickoff on a Friday morning for us, which is a little bit tricky on the last day of the working week. But as I said, George is a late replacement for Larry. I think Larry's done a late hamstring. So George, how's things, mate? You all good?
Yeah, pretty good. And I'll start with a trivia question for you. Yes, FC Sheriff do play in the Moldovan League, but do you know what country they're actually from, or what state, I should say?
I know they speak Russian. Now, what does that mean? They're from Russia? I'm not quite sure.
Oh, they are pretty much what's left of communist Russia. The name of their country is actually Transnistria. It's an unrecognised breakaway state from the ex-Soviet Union.
There you go. If you did know that little fact, let George know that you already knew that in the comments. I don't think you get too many comments on that one, George. But yeah, interesting fact. And it is apparently as well, and this is no sort of information on my behalf, just sort of listening to Andy Mitten talk, they're not actually playing at their home ground. Apparently where they are is technically in a war territory at the moment. So they're actually playing closer to the capital of Moldova. So it's actually a little bit of a trek from their usual home ground, but obviously safer for all parties travelling over to Moldova. But we'll get into all things in a little bit. Jamie from Northern Ireland, good to see you, mate, catching the live stream. Hope you're well. And George as well, always good to see you. So a few things. We'll discuss the starting 11s and predictions. Now, this is recorded a little bit before Erik ten Hag's press conference. I haven't seen the team travel yet. They usually do this at the stadium, so I assume they play travelling today over to Moldova, and then Erik ten Hag will hold his press conference, and that'll give us further information in regards to team news and fitness. So when we do our starting 11s, if someone's there and they're injured, this is obviously before Erik ten Hag's press conference. We're just going off the training photos at the moment. But just before we get into all the football side of things, where do you sit in regards to this group at the moment? Because here we are after Real Sociedad. It was sort of an okay performance, but ultimately didn't get the point, so disappointing. But you think, oh, hang on, okay, that's one game out of 6. We'll be fine. Well, this is a team that beat European champions last year. They won their first game in the group. Suddenly, if you don't take maximum points out of this game, you're looking potentially no points from 6 or 1 point from 6. And suddenly you've got a real uphill battle. So after the game against Sociedad, it was a bit, okay, it is what it is. Fast forward a week, now the pressure is really on. That loss against Sociedad is a damaging loss.
Yeah. I guess I understand that point of view, but in saying that, we shouldn't be too dramatic about it. Ultimately, as you said, it is a 6-game stage. Everyone forgets that we lost 2 games in the group stage. Last time we were in the Europa League, we still managed to progress through all right. It's just that these sorts of away trips can be intimidating, just for the sheer nature of no one has ever been to a country like this that's so unpredictable, especially not only for the fans but for the players. Allegedly, it's an artificial pitch, which obviously last time we played on one was when we lost to Young Boys.
Yeah, would have been.
So that'll be an experience that we're not used to.
What do you think the bigger challenge now? Obviously, you look at the team of Manchester United against Sheriff. Okay, Manchester United are favourites. Okay, clearly. And now anything can happen on a day. We've seen obviously Sheriff go to the Bernabeu and beat European champions in Real Madrid. So anything can happen. But what is the bigger challenge? Is the bigger challenge the football match in front of Man United in terms of potential threats Sheriff to sort of pose Man United? Or is the challenge going away to Moldova, the flight, the travel, the sort of uneasy sort of preparation in regards to all the postponed football sort of thing? Is that more of a challenge than the actual football game?
I think that is more of a challenge, but I do think what will happen because of all the postponements to our Premier League fixtures, that we might see a stronger lineup in the Europa League, as you'll see what I've gone for when we get to our starting 11s, because that's not an 11 I would have picked or would have thought Ten Hag would have picked had we been playing Leeds this weekend.
or had 3 points against Real Sociedad, and that goes back to my point. Yes, it's not a disaster that we drop points against Sociedad, but ultimately, if we drop points here, suddenly you combine the two together, and it potentially does look like a disaster is on the cards. But we'll sort of cross that hurdle off when we get in the starting 11s in a little bit. But is there any news sort of popping up? I just seen Adam in the chat. Good to see you, mate. As always, and do get your thoughts in the live chat. If anything you do want to discuss besides the football, let us know, and we'll happily discuss that. But George, is there anything else in regards to Man United sort of news that has sort of tickled your fancy or sort of popped up on your timeline over the last couple of days? Because there's been no football. It feels like a year since we played Arsenal, and I'm just thinking there is always so much news around Manchester United, but it has gone relatively quiet, I think.
Well, I guess that's what happens in a couple of weeks as a post-mortem after the transfer market. Ronaldo didn't get his move. Yeah. Martial's still there. Tellers we couldn't offload, so we had to loan him. And then this is just the post-mortem 2 weeks where you just digest it, and then the room mill will heat back up again. And we've got to strap ourselves in because there has been that lull after the transfer window, and here we are after this game. There is no football on the weekend or no Man United football, and we're going to go into an international break. I think the first game after the international break, am I correct, Jordan, saying it's the derby against City? Yeah. Unless they move that Leeds game beforehand. Or
actually, I just seen a game Arsenal against Manchester.
Palace got postponed. Maybe that.
Yeah, but I just seen a game further. I think it's October the 20th. I think. I don't know why. There was a reason on Sky Sports. It's something to do with their rescheduled game between Arsenal and PSV. They've postponed Arsenal versus Manchester City in mid-October. Now, I don't know the reason. It has something to do with this rescheduled fixture of PSV. But I don't know how that's going to affect potential Manchester City matches and how that potentially affects Manchester United if that's the first game back. It's interesting. So if anyone does know why that match against Manchester City and involving Arsenal in October has been postponed, do let us know. Munsey, good to see you, mate. Make sure you go over and subscribe to Munsey Talks. He's gone 3-1 United. Look, I'd love that. I'd like a clean sheet, but at the end of the day, we're all about the points at the moment. But look, in regards to starting 11, George, I'll throw yours up in a sec, and you can talk to the people in regards to, is this a preferred 11? Is it a predicted 11? And just thinking. And as we said, this is obviously before Erik ten Hag's press conference. If he says this player's got COVID, he's not travelling. Obviously, we don't know that information as of yet. But I'll just bring it up here. You got one real shock on. Again, I haven't seen him in any training photos. Erik ten Hag will likely clear this up. You got Anthony Martial on the left wing. It does look Rashford is potentially carrying an injury. I haven't included Rashford either. But probably the big two shouts, I think, is at that back line. I think Luke Shaw is an interesting one. It's something I've got Malacia, but I wouldn't disagree with Luke Shaw potentially coming in. But obviously, the other big call behind him, you've gone to Dubravka now. If Dubravka played the first game against Real Sociedad, I would have said, yep, yeah, of course, standard. Well, we lost against Sociedad. Now I'm just thinking, is he going to revert to that far of a weak? Now he might not. Maybe you'd make an argument that it's not a weakened team with Dubravka instead of De Gea. Now I would, but just your thinking behind Dubravka and Shaw over De Gea and Malacia.
Ultimately, there does come a time where you have to rotate. Or even though I'm going to sound hypocritical, yes, we don't have weekend football. We can, in theory, play strongest 11 and still keep them fresh. But there will come a time where these players will need match fitness, and this is the opportunity to give it to them. So, for example, we can't. Let's say yours use this example. We're in an FA Cup semi-final, and De Gea goes down. Is the first game you want Dubravka playing the FA Cup final? No, it's not. Yeah. I want him to have games beforehand. And the Europa League, this podcast is no stranger to my opinions on it, but this is the chance to give players like Dubravka a chance, potentially a chance to stake his case to see whether he actually wants to get back into this team and be first choice and legitimately compete with Malacia.
Yeah, well, otherwise Adam here reminded me. I just seen photos earlier, and Simon Stone, I think, is at the Carrington training ground in regards to watching United's trainer this morning, saying Luke Shaw wasn't in training today. I think there was a few players. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Luke Shaw, and I think Donny van der Beek as well. Donny van der Beek, the forgotten man. I don't think anyone includes him in 11s anymore. Haven't trained. Now, does that mean they won't travel?
Had he trained?
Well, there's been a few games this season where you think, okay, yeah, he's probably going to get a run in this one. Then ultimately, his former boss and Erik ten Hag says, no, we'll go for some other midfielders. Larry here, good to see. He's joined the live chat. Move the left winger to striker. He's the best centre forward at the club. It's an interesting one with Martial. Look, first, I don't think Anthony Martial will be involved. Now, in regards to Erik ten Hag's eyes, yes, I think that is the striker that he does want to use in regards to if everyone's available and fit and he's sort of wants to implement his football. I think Anthony Martial is that man at the moment. However, the situation we find ourselves in, I think you're going to have to play Ronaldo. Now, if Martial is miraculously fit, okay, play him. But I think Ronaldo, we're going to have to use him. Whether people like that or don't like it, I think more people would side on we're quite strong with Ronaldo, so it's a good thing if he plays. Now, you might want him to play 90 minutes or 30 minutes. That's a different debate. But ultimately, it feels weird because you would never had to do this with Cristiano Ronaldo, George, but we need to play him into form. And that's why I'm playing him. So I'll bring up my starting 11 here. And again, this is probably a predicted 11 in my opinion, but I think we'll play Ronaldo. And it sounds weird, as I said, I think we have to get him a goal, play him until he scores. Like every player is a confidence player. We always use this about players, especially with wingers. Oh, they're a confidence player. Every player plays better when they're confident. And Ronaldo is just lacking that little bit of bite, a little bit of energy, and maybe a goal will give that to him. But I think De Gea will play. I think it'll be the strongest back four. If Luke Shaw is fit, I wouldn't be opposed. Now, that's not me praising Luke Shaw or wanting to see him play. I just think Malacia, in terms of rotating your squad, I wouldn't be opposed to see Luke Shaw coming in. My big surprise here, and I've said every single week, I've said, now I want Christian Eriksen to play, George. Every single week I say, okay, this is the week he's going to be rested. I would play him, but I'd rest him. Okay, then he plays. No, I'll rest him this week. This is the game Erik ten Hag's going to rest him. Come the team selection, Christian Eriksen is picked. Here I am again. If I'm putting money on it, I think Christian Eriksen plays. However, if I'm sort of on the other side of the coin, I'd say, no, here's the game where Christian Eriksen should be rested. Now, rested in regards to there's no game on the weekend, what are we resting them for? I fully understand that argument, which probably adds weight to why Christian Eriksen will play. But like I said with Cristiano Ronaldo, George, in regards to playing him into some form, Casemiro as well. Like I think you need to put a strong body beside him in regards to a Scott McTominay and just play Casemiro, because I wouldn't say he was woeful against Real Sociedad, but he was poor. He was off the pace. And I just think ultimately he's going to end up playing consistently for Manchester United. So you might as well play him in a bit of form.
Yeah, I agree. I had Casemiro in my lineup as well. The reason why I went Eriksen over McTominay is that I felt as though Sheriff are probably going to play a low block against us. You want someone of Eriksen's footballing intelligence to be able to pick a pass between the lines, where that's something that's not really McTominay's game. He'll bring you the energy and the combative nature that we need in the midfield battle, which, if all goes to plan, we shouldn't be getting ourselves into against a team like Sheriff. Obviously, that my case would have been furthered had we been playing Leeds, and McTominay would have been a shoo-in for that game because that's just the team he plays best against. With regards to Dallo, though, they had I don't know what the situation with Wan-Bissaka coming back.
Yeah, well, he wasn't a training, but Mark Jurado, one of the young kids from the under-21s, was pitched in the training this morning at Carrington. So I wouldn't be surprised. He's obviously a player I watched a little bit over the years. He's very, very good at attacking. Well, he's attacking, but he's obviously got a defensive aspect to his game. Very solid right back. It'll be interesting to see if he's on that plane, because obviously Europa, do they have extended benches, or do you get 9 on the bench or something?
You have your 25-man squad, but then anyone that's homegrown and under the age of 21, you can play without naming them in the squad. That's
in regards to a match day bench. How many people are allowed on the bench in the Europa? I think it's more than the Premier League. Yeah, 9.
I think it's 9 that you're allowed on.
They'll end up soon and be like the World Cups in regards to having so many on the bench. You can use your whole squad. What I would see, and I was having a discussion with Larry earlier in regards to playing McTominay over Eriksen. Now I fully sit here and agree. I probably prefer Eriksen in there in regards to how we're hopefully going to play against Sheriff. However, I cast my mind back, and again, this is not to be sort of fearful of Sheriff, but ultimately they are a team who tore through Real Madrid. They weren't lucky to beat Real Madrid last season. They went to the Bernabeu and played them and sort of beat them at their own game. So they do pose threats. Now, I'm no expert on those threats, but they're obviously someone you do have to respect. What I would say, yes, you maybe lack a little bit of creative spark in that middle of the field. However, if you do have a solid base of McTominay and Casemiro there, now McTominay and Casemiro McTominay, especially in recent weeks, has shown his ability to sort of progress the ball, and Casemiro can obviously do that. What I'd say, though, if you have that strong base of those two midfielders there, push Malacia forward because you've got the legs of McTominay, push Dalot forward because you've got the legs of Casemiro. Suddenly you have like a front six almost. You've got Bruno, Sancho, Malacia, Dalot, and Anthony all occupying that final third. So that is where I think you can get your numbers and your creativity, because it's not Luke Shaw and Aaron Wan-Bissaka pushing forward. You've got good footballers in Malacia and Diogo Dalot. So that is where I would, again, I'd probably go Christian Eriksen. But the case where I don't think it's a disaster creativity-wise, if it's McTominay and Casemiro, because I think it allows your two fullbacks to bomb on if we're in that sort of final third area of the pitch.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. And if speaking of their threats, one of their players that surprisingly I'm familiar with, because he's in the Greek national team, Yannis Spivos actually scored the winner against Real Madrid last year.
Was that the volley? I remember the goal.
Yeah, that was the one to make it 2-1 at the Bernabeu.
What a moment for that guy! No, fair play to him. Look, hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully he had his career highlight of the Bernabeu and doesn't have it against Manchester United. Yeah. But just one or two comments before we move on here. Adam saying Rashford also not in training, not sure how long he'll be out for. Yeah, it's an interesting one with Rashford. There's been a little bit of news. Obviously, we discussed him last night, and there is potential over an injury, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, maybe training photos. Photos from the airport and the travelling squad will be announced in a few hours' time. But George here is also saying, give him a chance. Romero played for the entire competition when two of our keepers in form in regards to Martin Dubravka. I won't lose any sleep if Dubravka comes in. As George makes the point in regards to, you have to keep these players ready in case sort of a disaster hits later on in the season. They need minutes. They need familiarity with the other players. So definitely not losing any sleep with Dubravka. However, again, I don't want to panic, George, but I feel like I am every time I bring it up. We lost our first game. Now, I know it's Manchester United against Sheriff. I know we should be winning this game. But ultimately, I put myself in Eric Ten Hag's shoes, and in terms of the pressure that's placed on a Manchester United manager, it's must win. Now, I know it's not must win, but it might have that feel for Eric Ten Hag. Think, God, if I go on an international break and I'm bottom of the Europa League group, like, I've got an uphill battle. And I just think, now, there is a case. Maybe someone would say we're stronger with Dubravka. Now, I don't agree with that. If someone does, valid opinion. But I think Eric Ten Hag's eyes, David De Gea is the number one keeper, so you want to play your number one players in terms of giving yourself the best chance to win. So just your thoughts on Eric Ten Hag's approach in regards to sort of the nerves ahead of this game. Or shouldn't he have any nerves?
Personally, I don't think he's too nervous. I think that he knows that he's in a teething process with regards to implementing his strategy strategy, as he says, over a long period of time. And ultimately, there's not many teams that go five, unless you're Manchester City, they go five wins in a row. We were coming off the back of 4 wins in a row, 2 of which were against the Big Six and potential top 4 rivals. So it's only natural that there is going to be a drop-off, especially when the team's been rotated for the first time in that run.
Yeah,
I don't think he's feeling too nervous, to be honest.
No, look, I am confident going into this game. Do you have a bit of a score prediction? I don't know, as everyone knows, I'm not a huge fan of score predictions, but it seems to be the way you sort of do wrap up a preview. Would you be confident?
A scrappy 1-0 win. It's going to be an absolute shit game to watch.
Well, 2:45 on a Friday morning. I don't think it's set up to be an absolute classic. I think one scrappy 1-0 is sort of what these games do tend to be. But do leave your score predictions in the comments. Yeah, I could see a situation where it's like a 1-0 or look, I hate to say
it. It almost reminds me of like the year that we won the Europa League when we went to Partizan Belgrade. It was a 2:45 a.m. kickoff. We won 1-0.
What was the other game? I think we had a game. We had a game. I think it was the 6th group game. Zoria, was it?
Oh, Zoria Luhansk.
Luhansk. I think Ibrahimovic and Mkhitaryan scored 2 goals, and I think we had to win that game or at least get a point or something. And that was a big game.
We had to get a point to top the group.
To top the group, was it? And look, ultimately, we did lose that first game of that season against Feyenoord and ultimately won the competition, our last trophy. Was that our last trophy, the Europa League?
Yeah.
Oh, God. That was back
the Bangkok Cup.
Yeah, besides the big trophies. But 2016, 2017 against Ajax of all teams, and obviously as well. So if there's anything else you do want discussed in live chat, do let us know before we wrap up.
Was Ten Hag manager advised?
No, what was the guy's name? They had like that dual manager. It was like a coach and manager, and they kind of shared the role. Forget his name. Someone correct me. It might have been Eric Ten Hag. I don't think it was Eric Ten Hag. I think he might have been at Utrecht at the time or Bayern Munich at the time. I forget. But do let us know if you do know the answer to that. But in regards to a little bit of news I saw popping up on Twitter earlier, George, in regards to we won't get into a full ownership and full Glazer debate, but it has popped up that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I think whether he has said this or his spokesperson, or I think maybe someone, his spokesperson potentially did an interview in Paris, because obviously he's over there at the moment, I believe, in regards to he owns a club. He owns obviously Nice. Now, I don't know what his ownership sort of status is there, whether he's a full owner or owns a majority stake, I'm not quite sure. But obviously in and around the game, and obviously his name is in and around everything Manchester United at the moment in regards to a potential takeover. Now, the story came out as a bit of a continuation, George, saying Jim Ratcliffe's still interested in buying Manchester United. So that's all real sort of positive story amongst Manchester United fans. That's good. Jim Ratcliffe wants to buy United. Let's all get on board with that. The reason I'm not sold on this story is that, now, I like this sounding, but he says he wants to bring Luis Campos in as a director of football. That's where I just look at the story and think that's just a story to appease fans. That's a story that fans will say, oh, yeah, Campos, we want him as a director of football. Click on it. I don't think of someone buying a football club, which will take years to do, might take a year, might take 2 years to do. I don't think he's sitting there saying, what do I want? I'll get a director of football in. Think of the complications that would be involved in that bid. He's thinking stadiums, he's thinking sort of refinance, and he's thinking getting the funds together just for the bid. He's not thinking football at the moment. So I don't see anything sort of legitimate in that story at the moment. While it sounds good, I think it's one just to sort of rev up Manchester United fans and get them excited. Now, obviously, Manchester United fans can do with the excitement. That's only a good thing if we're positive. But I'm not sold on the story completely. But just your latest sort of feelings around stuff like Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers, and just your general thoughts around the situation.
Well, my thoughts around the situation, as much as Jim Ratcliffe appears to be an owner that does care about football, understands what Manchester United's about, the way I've always seen the ownership situation is that the Glazers won't sell unless they have a reason to sell. And if they show that they're not going to sell when we don't have European football at all, the only way their revenue is going to significantly drop that much that would force them into selling is if we get relegated. And realistically, that doesn't happen for 50 years. We can all fantasize about on this podcast like we love to do once a week. But no, the Glazers don't experience a drop in revenue or profit to the extent of not being
argument.
The next jump of not losing that money is not being in the Premier League. If not being in Europe,
I agree with your point, and it's extreme case in regards to relegation. But you are right. No matter where we are in the Premier League, we're going to be raking it in. The argument against that, and I've spoken with Larry as well, is there a potential in regards to, let's say, the valuation of the club? And okay, we're always going to continue to make money and make millions of money, but if we're at a peak now, is there a situation where in 5 or 10 years, yes, we'll still be raking it in, but not as much as now? So if they do want to sell in 10 years, well, they'll think, oh, hang on, we're a bit of a regret. We should have sold 10 years ago when the club was at its peak. Is there a case where in 5 and 10 years' time, yeah, okay, we're sitting 7th, 8th, 10th in the Premier League, is still one of the biggest clubs in the world, but ultimately if you're at a club sort of looking to sell, it's not as attractive as an option as it was. So is that a potential thing where the Glazers are looking, well, have we taken this club? And now they've taken this club absolutely nowhere. But in regards to milking the club as much as they can, have they sort of reached their peak?
Potentially, and I guess where another angle comes in is that TeamViewer's share price has dropped 80% since they've started sponsoring United. And they've already announced that they're not going to be renewing their sponsorship after their 5-year deal expires. Only 2 years into it that they've announced this. Yeah. And if teams continue to follow, if this trend continues to follow, whereas companies sponsor United and their share price dramatically drops like that, it's going to deter sponsors off sponsoring United, and ultimately that's where a lot of the money for the ownership comes from. And if you can't attract sponsors, you're ultimately not going to run the too profitable a team. I think that's what may prompt them to sell, if anything.
What do you make of it? And we'll talk about, okay, the Premier League bringing in money and so the potential sponsorships and how important that is to football clubs, and especially Manchester United and the Glazers. What do you make of this? And love to get everyone's thoughts in the live chat in regards to the new Chelsea owner, Todd Boehly. Boehly or Bowley? I've always
Bowley, the North versus South.
Yeah, in regards to that. And look, it's not a serious discussion yet, but obviously it will turn into it. We all know the situation regarding the Super League. I'm a firm believer in the Super League will return in a couple of years in regards to the sort of the push from big clubs to sort of pursue it. I think that is on the cards. I think everyone thought, we got rid of the Super League.
I agree it inevitably happens. I agree.
I think it comes back. But in regards to that, if anyone hasn't seen this from the new Chelsea owner, obviously an American owner coming in, we've seen what potentially, if you look at Liverpool's situation and compare that to the Glazers and Sir Alex Ferguson, if you look at the Liverpool situation, you've made this point earlier as well, George, in regards to FSG. When Klopp leaves, you're starting to see cracks in the Liverpool in terms of the way they do business, and maybe Jurgen Klopp has just been papering over those cracks.
Yes, I agree. I've said it on this podcast as well. I agree. That's the way I see Liverpool's situation.
But I draw this connection in regards to their American owners. Chelsea now have an American owner, and some of the noises coming out of his camp is purely like Americanizing the sport. And his latest one, if anyone hasn't caught it in the live chat, is in regards to having a North v South Premier League All-Stars match. So maybe all the London clubs, and so your striker from Arsenal and your left winger from Chelsea, your goalkeeper from Brentford, whoever, sort of a All-Star 11 team from the South, and obviously an All-Star team from the North in regards to having Scott McTominay and Jordan Henderson lining up in midfield together, and Kevin De Bruyne and Bruno Fernandes. So ultimately we laugh, and it's sickening. I hate it. money talks, and he's talked about the money this would bring in and how successful it has been in America. And the more American owners that sort of get their sort of teeth into the game in English football, something like this, unfortunately, is going to happen.
It's one of those things that I don't think this would happen, because if you're trying to implement an American concept in England only, I can't see that happening. The reason why, unfortunately, I do see the Super League inevitably returning is that it's got practically the whole of Europe and involved and the whole world involved in terms of tuning into it. Yeah. With regards to the American ownership with Todd Bowley at Chelsea, I think that they're going to follow the same trend as what's happened to United, what's going to happen, what is in the process of happening at Liverpool now. And we see how stale it's gone at Chelsea. It wouldn't surprise me if they have a David Moyes-esque season.
Well, George here making the point, George in the comments saying, if it's when the season ends, would it be an issue? I don't look at it as an issue in regards to, and call me selfish or call me too much of a traditionalist. I need to sort of get with the times and sort of evolve. It's not so much yes, there is a player welfare debate in regards to adding another game to their already sort of huge sort of fixture congestion. However, mine's just, it's not football. Like, yes, no. I know you've got to move with the times, but that's American baseball, that's American football, hockey, whatever. And fair play, it works for them and they love it. English football fans, and here I am an Australian, but I sort of class myself in that category of an English football fan. We don't like that. That's not what the game is. Like Manchester United, Casemiro shouldn't be lining up next to Jordan Henderson. That should not happen.
And the things that I hate about those games in America is that none of those players ever give a shit. They're just there to put on a show, which is ultimately what their sport's about. That's not what football's about. It's not about putting on a show. It's about the heart. It's about the passion. Can you imagine United and Liverpool fans cheering for the same team and it's not your national team?
Oh.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, I completely. I would hate to see, and look, players change clubs. If Mohamed Salah joined Manchester United tomorrow, I'd love him playing next to Ronaldo. But at the moment, if you have Ronaldo and Mo Salah, two sort of rivals, suddenly on the same team, that's, well, call me old school, but it's not football. Well, now I know obviously players have their national teams, obviously, but that's a different scenario, in my opinion. That's playing for your country. That's something that's embedded in the game, and I don't think the game needs this. However, as I said, if I'm a betting man, George, I think within, I don't know whether 2 years or 10 years, I'm not sure where on the scale, I think something like this does happen because, as I said, the more American owners come in with the same sort of concept, same ideas and same sort of avenues to pursue money, which they have seen work in America, they will get their way in over in the UK.
I don't think they will with this particular game, though. It's one of those things.
It might not be this game. Might be other.
I can eventually see something, for example, like a Premier League All Stars versus an MLS All Stars, but I can't see it splitting up the Premier League, which is just as bad in my opinion. But.
Well, they maybe kind of. America do have those where sometimes they do
English have MLS All Stars now. They went and played against Bayern a couple of times a few years back.
And A-League obviously have those. Obviously, some of the English clubs come over here and play an A-League All-Stars. Did we play an A-League All-Stars with Man United when they came out here?
2013.
No, in the last tour down in Melbourne. No, we played Melbourne Victory.
No, it was Barcelona that played the A-League All-Stars.
Okay, well, yeah, I knew there was a team out here. I forget if it was Man United.
Traore scored for the A-League All-Stars and Barcelona in the same game.
I think Adam making a point here is what I think of when I think of the ideas. Imagine telling Roy Keane he had to play with Liverpool players. It's just it's not a football thing, in my opinion. But pretty much just about close to wraps up the preview. As I said, it is our last preview for a while because there is no game against Leeds over the weekend. So we'll obviously be back on Friday night with the review. Hopefully discussing 3 points against Sheriff. But then there is no football for a while. Obviously no Premier League. Then you got the 2-week international break. And then obviously the return against Manchester City, which obviously that is a huge test for the players and Eric Ten Hag. And we'll see what this season that does have in store. But George, what are you going to do with yourself then for 2 weeks? Well, 3 weeks. It kind of feels like 3 weeks, really.
Well, unlike you, I don't have a wife or a pet turtle or a dog to discover at home. My whole family is away overseas, so I'm just living at home by myself at the moment. So I guess I'll have to hope that Wolves get an upset over City. The NRL finals are on this weekend. But look, I'm with Larry. Like the funerals in London, I don't expect Greater Manchester Police to be rocking up for the Queen's funeral. Seriously, that can't be the excuse.
Look, who knows? So many logistics go into this. I wouldn't be. I don't feel comfortable in sort of commenting on it. But here I am. I will comment on and say it makes absolutely no sense. But it just makes no sense. But look, I agree. But George here saying valid points in regards to this Americanization of the game. We see this here with state of origin, state v state, mate v mate. It shouldn't happen. But make multiple supporter bases tune into one game. Look, you can understand in terms of money-making operation, which obviously it is now, it does make sense. So if it makes money, it makes sense. Unfortunately, that is the way of the world at the moment. But before we do wrap up, one thing just sort of jogged my memory. If anyone did tune in last night, you'd know that Larry sort of prematurely ended the stream a few minutes before we went on. I was just about to make it a little bit of an announcement, and Larry sort of accidentally pressed the end stream button. So we'll get it in here. George, keep your finger away from the end broadcast button while you're there. But yeah, there is no football against Leeds. So over the weekend, we'll be recording a podcast with a special guest, something a little bit different. A Manchester United fan. He's not a footballer, though. He's a UFC fighter and one of the best potential UFC fighters in the world in the next couple of years. He's undefeated. He's got a huge amateur record, and he's had two or three fights in the UFC now. He's remained undefeated. He's from Dagestan, Russia, and obviously lives in Manchester now. He's a big Manchester United fan. Mohamed Makayev, unbelievable fighter. He fights in the 125 division, which is the smallest division in the UFC, and he is potentially the next champion in that division. So can't wait to pick his brain on all things. We'll tie everything in regards to football and Manchester United discussion, but we'll tie it in regards to his career and his fighting. And we talk about George. We talk about players having that fighting spirit, whether that be a Bruno Fernandes or a Roy Keane or a Scott McTominay or whoever. It's different. These guys, even the tough guys, even a Roy Keane or a Bruno Fernandes, I'm not saying Bruno Fernandes, tougher players like that, they get a kick on the ankle, they'll roll down for 2 minutes, and we'll still say, yeah, they've got a good spirit, they're tough. These fighters, they get punched in their face and they don't flinch. And I'm just thinking that is still be fascinating to get his sort of take on how he perceives players' passion, players' toughness, where sort of we praise some certain players, but it's nothing compared to what an actual fighter goes through. So love to pick his brain in regards to that, but
yeah, 100%. I remember an interview on MUTV with Michael Bisping, who's also a United fan. How he
my favourite UFC fighter.
Yeah, how he tied in his love for United, how he actually viewed the state of the club at the moment, what playing for the shirt meant. And yeah, it was nice. It was a good insight.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there is obviously, as I said, that podcast coming up. Hopefully over the weekend. He's flying to Bahrain at the moment. We're going to do it over the weekend. I'm just waiting to tee up a time with him. In regards to Manchester United combat sports, obviously Tyson Fury looks like he's going to have a big fight against Anthony Joshua at the end of the year. So all things are kicking off in regards to combat sports at Manchester United. Hopefully they all get wins and Manchester United show a bit of fight on the pitch and get 3 points. Because if we don't get 3 points against Sheriff George, this is going to be a long 3 weeks. So fingers crossed.
And then we'll have RJ on It's a Football thing saying there's a new sheriff in town again. So
yeah, it's set itself all up. Yeah, you've already just. I've seen all the memes just flash before my eyes now, George.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt. We need to get the job done. Fingers crossed Ronaldo can find his scoring boots and get us off the mark and get himself off the mark because he definitely needs it. But until then, Larry and I will be back on Friday night, most likely discussing the match against Sheriff, win, lose or draw. And make sure you do leave a like on the video on your way out. If you are new, if you could hit that subscribe button, that would be great. And we'll chat to you then. Until then, cheers.